little bit about menstruation, the hygienic aspect of menstruation. Of course, the do's, everybody knows that you need to wear a pad and all of that, but the don'ts. Let's talk about that.
So, like you said, thank you so very much. Thanks for having me again. Like you said, you've explained it very well. Menstruation is what happens when a woman doesn't get pregnant. The unfertilized egg drops. It happens every 28 days. It's a hormone cycle. And it's a very normal part of most women and girls. They spend at least about maybe 38 years of their life menstruating. So every month, someone somewhere is menstruating. But the don'ts, or I guess what happens when they do menstruate and they don't have enough supplies, like you mentioned, is that sometimes they end up wearing a pad for too long, or they end up using improper supplies, like maybe leaves, or even little bits of foam, or some rags, or old socks, or even newspapers. When you ask the girls, they just bundle them up and put them under there because they can't afford to buy pads, like you said. Now, I think in 2001, pads were actually being sold for about 3 to 12 cedis, based on which brand you picked. Right now, they're about 18 to 25 cedis. So the same way inflation has affected rice, oil, it's also affected pads. But now we have the added luxury tax on top of that, which makes it impossible for the normal girl
Exactly, and you wonder why pad is a luxury.
Because
when did it become a luxury?
No woman has ever thought menstruation was a luxury, so then why are pads a luxury item? I mean, I can't imagine condoms being a luxury item because they're not. So, and I think these are reasons why if the women or people in parliament should really think about, because we do not have the option to not menstruate. We don't. If we did, many women would just opt out because menstruation is not pleasant. It's not a luxury at all. There should be no reason why it should be this expensive for us to get it. And then when it is so expensive, it forces the girls to enter into the sex trade, which then leads into more health issues because then they're getting STDs like the HIV, and then they're spreading that, and it has a trickle-down effect on the whole economy. So it's not just girls that suffer. If someone has AIDS or HIV and she comes to sleep with someone else's husband who's being adulterous, he takes that home to his wife gets it. It hurts everybody. So yeah, the most of our economic issues would be solved if we just went down to the base root, which is girls not having enough supplies to be able to use pads in school.
The pads in school. And another thing that people always talk about is that the fact that we have access to pads, yet you have to keep changing your pad in a day.
Yes.
This question keeps popping up because some people will wear it in the morning and then in the evening, that's when they change it. How many times in a day must one change their pad?
Well, typically about every 4 to 6 hours. But honestly, most people cannot afford to be changing their pads every 4 to 6 hours. It depends on your flow. If your flow is very heavy, you'll be changing it more often. Some people can change pads up to 4 times a day. But who can afford to change pads 4 times a day for buying out 25 cedis per box? And there's only about 12 in there. You'll run through one in 3 days, and then most people bleed for 3 to 7 days. So you're going to need 50 cedis every month to spend on pads. It's exorbitant. It's unimaginable.
Can you substitute with a tissue?
Please no. You may briefly for maybe 5 minutes, and then you bleed through the tissue or any other, even if you use newspapers, even if you use foam, leaves, whatever else the girls use, they bleed right through it. And that's another reason why they end up not going to school, because then they'd rather stay home. Because if you saw yourself at school, then boys are going to laugh at you. It's not a dignified way. You can use a tissue in a pinch, in an emergency, whilst you go find a pad, but you really shouldn't. It's not going to help you in the long run.
What are some of the consequences if you don't take good care of yourself or change your pad frequently?
If you don't change your pads often, you're going to end up getting urinogenital infections, candida, thrush, UTIs. Those are just going to breed because you're sitting in wetness, in moist. It's not pleasant. Your whole day is ruined because it's just wet. And so yeah, you end up
somebody might say that they don't bleed heavily, and so they can wear one pad, for probably close to 10 hours before they change it.
Well, the flora of the the female flora down there, whilst you might think you're okay, it will also depend on the quality of the pad that you're using. Some pads are really good at wicking away the liquid and keeping the surface dry.
Right.
So that might work for you, but sometimes if you don't, you might even develop a rash in between your legs as well, because it's wet and it's hot and you're just carrying around this heat, and you will start to smell. It's not pleasant for anybody, for you or the people around you, because it gives off an odor. Yeah.
Is this the cause of some women smelling?
Sometimes, yes.
But they don't know, right?
They
can't afford it.
They can't afford it. This is their life, and they're used to. After a while, you go nose blind, so you don't smell it, but the people around you do. Yeah.
You can join this conversation as well as we're talking about menstruation do's and don'ts. So send in your messages. Of course, we'll definitely love to read your message live on air. We're streaming on Facebook. And we're getting to know the kind of things that you are not supposed to do when you are menstruating. Now, one thing that keeps popping up is the fact that you ought to keep changing your pad periodically. I mean, often. It's not even it's often, very, very often, as frequent as possible if you can afford it. But the only challenge that we have is the cost of pad on the market, where currently the pad that people used to buy at a cost of 7 cities is now 18 cities.
Yeah.
And this is even the cheapest pad. So for those who can't afford the pad, then what do they do? What's their next step? What are you supposed to do during your menses to have a hygienic menstrual cycle?
Well, menstrual hygiene is basic. Take regular showers, change your pads often. Do not douche. There's really no need for anybody to be douching. The vagina is self-cleaning. There's no need for anybody to be helping. It doesn't need help that way. And also don't spray perfumes down there.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't. If it smells, wash it. It'll be fine. Regular soap and water is fine. If you need extra disinfecting or extra deodorizing, you might use lime and just a little
But vagina perfumes, vagina.
Yes, I've seen them.
You see them, right?
Yes.
Not advisable?
No, and also why? If there was a vaginal spray, I would be asking, why do you need a vaginal spray? Why are you smelling? You're not supposed to smell. So then why? Why don't you want to find out the root cause of that smell and treat that instead of camouflaging it with spray? I would be worried. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about how to dispose of your pad as well. How do you get rid of it?
Please do not flush it. It blocks the septic. It causes problems. Just wrap it up in a little bit of newspaper and put it in with a regular trash. Don't flush the pads. That definitely is a big no-no. Yeah, and that's pretty much it, really. That's the basic disposable pads, yes. Of course, if you're using reusable pads, or not reusable pads, but like reusable underwear, then definitely wash them and hang them out to dry in the sun so that they're dry thoroughly, because those are very absorbent, so they're going to be heavy.
Right.
And then we dry them out in the sun, you can reuse them again. There are also menstrual cups and discs. Those are ones that you insert. They're the more sustainable ones. So you insert those, they collect the fluid, you pour it out into the toilet, and then you rinse out the cup. But yeah, make sure you rinse it out properly with soap and water. Make sure it's very dry, and then you can reuse it again.
Now, using of the cup, is it affordable?
In the long term, yes. The initial cost might be a bit prohibitive, but in the long term, yes, it works out. One cup can replace up to about maybe 3 or 4 months worth of, 3 or 4 months worth of pads. So yeah, you'll be fine.
Can a virgin use the cup?
Yes, it doesn't break.
Okay.
It doesn't. It goes in and then it sits.
All right.
So it's like a little funnel. It goes in and it just opens up right to just collect. It does not break your hymen, no.
And how comfortable is it?
Well, I guess with the right insertion technique, it's comfortable enough.
You can adjust.
Yeah, you can adjust. And then because the cup is a little bit longer, if the cup is not comfortable, you might use the disc. It looks like a cereal bowl, the disc. So it's a little bit shorter. It doesn't come out as much.
Okay.
But yeah.
What about the tampons? Is it advisable for, virgins?
Yes, they can use tampons.
Okay.
Yes, they can all. Anybody can. Using period products does not break your virginity. It shouldn't preclude, wanting to be a virgin should not preclude you from using period products. It doesn't go in high enough to break a hymen. It doesn't, no. So yeah, The tampons, they go in, they're really tiny, they go in, but then they expand a little and then they just soak up. So no, it doesn't break anything.
Are you supposed to change the tampon as often as you change your pad?
Yes, tampons do absorb more, but yes, you should be changing them often as well, yes.